Gomel is recited when a person is saved from a dangerous situation. Then we recite bracha, and the same thing, the Frierdiker Rebbe, when he came out of his imprisonment and he arrived in Leningrad and Petersburg, so he also recited this as well. And he said a mimer also in that year with the language of that bracha. And the bracha we recite is Baruch Atah Hashem, Hagoimel Chayavim Toivis, Shigmalani Toiv. That blessed are you, Hashem, given goodness to those that are liable, to those that are chayavim, meaning they are not the way they're supposed to be. Kindness for me. In a nusach, this language of the bracha, nusach birchas hagoimel, this language of the bracha, that's the bracha of the bracha of hagoimel shebeirach gambal agula, that also the one who was redeemed made this bracha kasher chazar leburim u'masorei, when he returned to his completeness, to his fullness, to his, to his health from his imprisonment, or that he returned entirely from his imprisonment. In other words, Yud Gimel was when he arrived, on the 13th of Tammuz, when he arrived home. When he arrived to the place of his home in Leningrad, which was previously known as Petersburg, and then afterwards it's now known as Petersburg again. And the Frierdiker Rebbe asks on this language of the bracha, in the mimer that he said on the 13th of Tammuz, on that year when he was released from prison, that is not 1927, Tafresh Pei Zayin, Lama Mishtana Nusach Bracha Zu Mebirchas Hanes. Why is the language different than the bracha that one makes for a miracle? Sha'omer, that a person that experienced a miracle says, Baruch Atah Hashem, Sha'asli Nes. And when he returns to the place that a miracle was done for him, so then he says, Baruch Atah Hashem, Sha'asli Nes b'mak mazeh, he made for me a miracle in this place. So why is this different? The language and the expression, the bracha should have been that he did for me something that's good. In other words, he saved my life. I was in danger, and he did for me good. And that's what I'm happy about. And that's what I'm thanking Hashem for. In addition to the change, that this bracha is a totally different way than we see an ordinary bracha for a miracle. When it comes to making a bracha on a miracle, we say, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, that you made for me a miracle. Or we say, like I mentioned before, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, that did for me a miracle in this place, etc. Here the bracha is, blessed is the one that did a kindness to me. Gemalani is in the word gemilas chasadim. And he did a kindness for me, goodness. Even though this bracha is also often for a miracle. In addition to the difference that we don't just say Baruch she'asa toiv, instead of saying Baruch she'asa toiv, that he did for me good. Instead we say Shegmalani toiv, that he acted in a special kind way towards me. So in addition to that, Shemagdimim bebracha zu es haloshon hagoimel lachayavim toivus. Before we say blessed Hashem is that did for me good, we also precede this bracha, the expression, the one that does for the liable ones, he does them good things. What does that mean? The ones that are liable, the ones that are seemingly responsible for something negative, that seemingly they would be liable for a bad thing. And despite the fact that they're liable for a bad thing, Hashem is kind enough and he does them miraculous things. So, or good things he does them, despite the fact that they're undeserving of it. So the Rebbe wants to know, why do we precede a negative? This is a mentioning something, a liability, a negative thing about oneself. The very fact that there is a performance of a miracle over here, this itself is an indicator that by nature he would not be able to attain this type of salvation. And even more so, through the miracle, one has his merits are deducted. That's what's brought down. The Chazal say that a person should not rely on miracles. A person should do things in a natural way and not endanger himself where we'll need to have a miracle to save himself, because we don't want that a person should need to have a miracle, because when a person has a miracle, so then they deduct from his merits. And we call Malcolm still in all, in an ordinary bracha of miracles, one does not mention anything of liability. Specifically in the bracha of Agomel, we mention something that has negative, something that has to do with a liability. The one that did good to those that are liable. Well, is there a second paragraph? To be able to explain this question, which the Frierdiker Rebbe asks in his Maimer, he prefaces in his Maimer as follows: it's known, the descent of the neshama into the body, though it's a very great descent. This descent is for the sake of an asset. We have to explain the connection between the idea of the descent of the neshama is for the sake of an ascent with this whole idea of Hashem for being saved from a dangerous situation. According to what's explained in Tanya in the Igeres HaKodesh, the beginning of the idea of exile, in its most finest, in its most refined manner. It's when the soul descends down here below. That's descent from a high building to a deep pit. So that's where Golus begins. First Golus, the initial Golus begins with the descent of Neshama down here. This idea of descent is also imprisonment. And it's important to note, and later on the Maimer is going to make reference to this, that there's 4 things that the Chachamim established this bracha for. The bracha Baruch Hagoyim L'Chayavim Toivus. One is for someone that was dangerously ill. One is for someone that was freed from prison. One was for someone that traveled the sea, and one was for someone that traveled the desert. So therefore, imprisonment is a very important point over here, in addition to the fact that the Frierdiker Rebbe was imprisoned. So he's saying, the descent from a high building to a deep pit. It's even greater. It's a greater descent than just leaving one's home to go into prison. And the idea of in general is called a pit, a deep pit, as it's known. That it says also concerning Yosef that they threw him into a pit. The prisons very often in the days of old used to be literally they dug out a hole in the ground and they put a grate over it and they threw food into there and that was it. So the prison was like a pit. It's also understood from what's explained in the continuation of the Maimon of the Friedrich Rebbe. The neshama, while it was above in the high building, is actually a part of Hashem above. And it finds itself in a place of godliness. Like it says, I swear by Hashem, the God of Israel, that I stood before him. And this is talking about that the neshama, when it was above, was standing before Hashem. So we see that it's a place of godliness the way the neshama was above. Okay, move on. This is also understood when we compare it and we say kal v'chomer from the way the malachim are above. What do we see from the way the malachim are above? It says, yesh b'zeh eser dargas, there are 10 levels. But Rambam, like to explain the Rambam, yesh b'hem eser dargas, that the Rambam enumerates there's 10 different levels of malachim. The Rambam says that's the reason why when we look throughout the entire Torah, we find 10 different names that the malachim are called. There's Srafim, Epanim, Chayos, Malachim, all Ishim, there's all different types of names that malachim are called. And their mind is greater than the mind of those that are the levels of the constellations, which according to the Rambam are thinking beings, are conscious beings. And and the comprehension that the neshamas comprehend in godliness is even greater than what comprehend in godliness. Like the Chazal say, the thought about the Yidden preceded everything. They preceded also the Malachim, that the Chazal discussed if the Malachim were created on the second day of creation, or they were created on the 5th day of creation, when all other flying things were created. But the Jewish people preceded the entire creation. Therefore, they preceded even Malachim. So now the Rebbe says, when we talk about they preceded them, when we talk about preceding, it's not about preceding in time. It says that Chivin Shenamer Behem Lashon Akdam, since it says about the Yid, an expression of Kadm, not Akdam, Kadm, that preceded, moving, it's understood, She'ein HaKavan of Dim Bezman, we don't mean over here, preceding in time, because the entire idea of preceding in time doesn't apply. We're talking here before time was even created. Rather, the intention over here is preceding in quality. If so, it's understood that the comprehension and the knowledge of the neshamas is greater incomparably than the comprehension and the knowledge of the malachim. So, especially according to what the Chazal say, the neshamas were chiseled out, were hewn out from under Hashem's throne of glory. And even higher, and they came down thought, like a child that came from his father's brain. Like I said, he blew into his nostrils the soul of life. The man, someone that blows from within. So we see how high the neshama was. And this was all prior to the descent down here. So that is the Igra Rama, the high building, which the neshama. And now we're going to explain, based on how high it was, now we're going to understand how low it falls down and how terrible the descent is. From there, the neshama descended down here below in a great and powerful descent. Like it's obvious and visible simply. When the neshama descends below, and becomes enclosed in the body. Immediately when the person is born, in other words, the first moment when the neshama descends into the body, the child, the baby, has no connection with understanding, comprehension. So that already is a powerful descent. Prior to coming into the body, it had this great comprehension and godliness, even higher than the malachim. Now it doesn't know anything. And even after it is born, yesh aliyah b'seida v'adraga, the ascent of the neshama is in an organized and a step-by-step process. When the child begins to speak, Aviv Malamde Torah, his father teaches him Torah and Torah, Tzivalon, Moshe, etc. Oisius, he teaches him the letters of the Aleph Beis, Kudus, the vowel signs of the Aleph Beis. And afterwards, 5 years old, he starts learning Chumash. And as the Mishnah, 10 years old, he starts learning Mishnayos, Ben Chamesh. As the Gemara, 15 years old, he starts learning the reasonings of the Gemara. Until finally, when he's 40, that's when he reaches the stage of Bina, of understanding. So we see how the neshama had descended so low, even in comprehension. In addition to the fact that he had to work his way up step by step until he could reach the level of Ben Arbaim Labina, 40 years old, to be able to understand. But even then, it's not like the way it understood Hashem the way it was before. The comprehension in general of the neshama while it's down here below is incomparable to its comprehension while it was above. And this great descent, there's a very why did Hashem do this? Why did Hashem take the neshama that had such a great comprehension of godliness and put it down here? Taking that type of comprehension, and even whatever comprehension it gets, it's step by step and slowly, and takes 40 years and so on. But the explanation of why the neshama has to descend so low, like it's explained over there in the Maimer. And we brought this down at the beginning of this paragraph. The ascent is for the sake of an ascent. That the neshama should reach in its ascent in a much higher place than the place from which it descended. If through its descent it will only reach to the same place where it descended from, then nothing descent. So we cannot say that the neshama, it came down here to this world to eventually in Gan Eden or whenever in Olam Haba to be able to receive back what it did before. Then it was all a waste of time. Then it was for no purpose. Rather, it must reach a higher level than it was before. So the question is, how does the person reach that? How can a person arrive at this ascent? That for that sake the neshama descended down here below. The person was born, or Yula, the person was born to toil. The person born it already begins by him the ascent. But it depends how, it depends who helps him. The idea as initially comes about through the assistance of another that has to help the neshama that's down here, a young child, start comprehending and understanding something. The educator, or the one that directs him, that educate him and direct him. And afterwards, I did Torah, and through his Rebbe that teaches him Torah. And then, after all of this assistance in his formative years, that he becomes a situation that he teaches himself and he educates himself, and he goes from strength to strength. That is the cause of the great ascent that he attains. How does he attain this great ascent? Mishum shavidasei boy the amal v'yigiyam, because his service came about through effort and through toil. And that toil brings about a much greater level. The very toil itself, the very effort itself, is considered the ascent that brings to an ascent. Through a person does not take in consideration all the difficulties and all the obstacles and other types of things that are blockages, and he toils from it is avoided to fulfill his mission in this world. I was created to serve my maker. Then he comes to a much greater ascent than the way he was even before he came down into this world. Like the addition to the light that comes about when it comes out of darkness. Like the statement says, according to the suffering, according to that is the reward. So being that the person has much more challenges down here, there's much more suffering, therefore the reward is much greater. Seemingly it's not understood. Why does a person need a lot of effort in his service? There is someone in charge of this castle, meaning there's Hashem is in charge of this world. There's an eye that sees and an ear that hears. If so, why does Hashem do it this way? That a person has to toil in his service. Especially according to what the Baal Shem Tov revealed in his well-known teaching. That Hashem brings this world into being every single moment from total nothingness, like the first time around. Him came to more, but so it's an even greater wonder. Why are the things that are obstacles and that stand in his way to such a degree that a person needs to have effort and toil? But the matter is also understood according to what we mentioned before. Since the ascent comes about through descent, and the increase in light and the increase in wisdom comes specifically when it comes out of darkness and it comes out of foolishness. That's when you have a greater light. That's when you have greater wisdom. That's why a person was created to toil, because only through toil, only through difficulties, only through challenges can they reach much higher levels. So now the Rebbe is going to bring the four things that we mentioned before that a person needs to make a bracha hagomel for when he does these four things. And he's going to explain those things in the spiritual sense. Stand in his way and are obstacles for a person's connection and ascent and service of Hashem. There's in general four types. These are the four things that one makes a bracha of hagomel. One thing is a person that was dangerously ill and he became well. So what does that mean spiritually? This is what a person needs. To be able to fulfill his job, he needs a healthy Jewish heart and he needs a healthy Jewish mind. Sometimes there could be an illness spiritually in his heart, spiritually in his brain. Therefore, there has to be the idea of toil. They should do everything that's dependent upon him. Baruch and Hashem assists him. He becomes like a sick person that became healed until he becomes totally and completely healed. Inyan base, another type of thing that a person makes a bracha b'hagomel l'chiyam toivus. Someone that leaves prison. What does that mean spiritually? The avodas adam, who in the service of a person today is In the Ksiv it says, Rasha machtiras tzaddik. The Rasha surrounds the tzaddik. Who is the Rasha? Who's the tzaddik? It's talking about our internal Rasha, the Yetzer Hara, and our own internal tzaddik, the Yetzer Toiv. The Yetzer Hara is machtir mesavas Yetzer Toiv. The Yetzer Hara surrounds and like imprisons the Yetzer Toiv. Actually, it's Toiv Yoshu Beis Asurim to such a degree that the Yetzer Toiv feels like he's in prison. Amnam kashi yedei abiyoshu Beis Asurim shalashem arsum loy malakal ars kvoidei. When the person knows, even while sitting in prison by the Yetzer Hara, that the earth is entirely, everything that's in it is Hashem, and the entire earth is filled with His glory. Therefore, the Yid always has great hope. He does everything that's dependent upon him. So it should be recognizable that also in prison, over there, the glory of Hashem is found. Until we say that I fill, like we said before, that Hashem Himself says, I fill it, that even in a place of imprisonment, even a place where the Yetzer Toiv feels surrounded and imprisoned by the Yetzer Hara, he still feels that Hashem is with him. And then also then he affects I should go out in freedom from his prison. Who the third level, the third concept is the even when a person repairs these two matters, there's still a matter, a state that he's traveling in the sea. What does that mean, the sea? His head is completely preoccupied in matters of making a living. That the idea that the matters of making a living totally confound his brain are likened to a very tumultuous seawater, the crashing waves and so on. Matters of his parnasa confuse and bother the calmness of his body and the calmness of his soul. Like the Chazal say, those that take a ship ride across the sea, a physical ship ride, that those who go by ship by sea, they do not calm down, they do not have a calmness in their mind until they return to dry land. The fourth idea of a person spiritually that it needs the Barach of Agomel, those that travel in the wilderness, in the desert. This, instead of being in an inhabited place, the beauty of a person is to be settled in a home. Instead, he finds himself in a desert, in a wilderness, a place that's not worthy of being the habitat of the supernal man. It's not able to be sown and planted and harvesting and all types of human preoccupations. It's a wasteland. When a person does everything that's dependent upon him, wilderness, then he makes a brach of Agomel. Since the person finds himself in this low world, that there's no world lower than it, as much as he puts in effort to do everything that's dependent upon him, the majority, there's no tzaddik in the land that will do good, and he will not be chote. Now, what does chote mean? Usually, chote means to do a sin. But the Rebbe teaches not a sin in the literal sense, but rather like a well-known explanation as brought down in Mamar Chassidus. Yechta meloshn chisaron. Yechta is from the word lack. So it's not that every tzaddik does navera, but even every tzaddik might have something that's lacking. It's impossible. Then in the vast majority of cases, there shouldn't be some matter of a deficiency in his avodah. The truth is, a single Jew was created as a tzaddik. That's why we say, before the Pirkei Avos, we say this, Amich kun tzaddikim, your nation are entirely righteous tzaddikim. Since he's a tzaddik, it's incumbent upon every year to do his avodah in a complete and perfect manner. Since there's no righteous person in the land that will do good and will not be a chaytiv, meaning there's by him some type of lack and deficiency in his avodah, especially in the time of exile and the double and quadruple darkness of the times just before Mashiach's coming. Therefore, a person is called liable. Like we said, the beginning of the Baruch, it says, the one that does kindness to those that are chayav. Why is he liable? Liability over here doesn't mean a negative liability, but it means it's an obligation. He is obligated. That's the word chayav means. He's obligated to complete the service in a perfect manner, without any chait, without any type of lack or deficiency. But because of the lack that the person experiences, not go out and overcome the four matters mentioned beforehand. The sick person, the imprisoned person, the sea traveler, or the one who travels in the desert, he cannot extricate himself from those situations. Rather, he needs the assistance of Hashem. That's why we make this bracha in such a fashion that we asked before at the beginning of the Maimer. He adds the very fact that he wasn't able to do the matter completely indicates that he's still obligated. That's why he's called a chayav, like we said, chayavim types. That's why it uses the word malani, an expression of doing acts of kindness. It was given to him from Hashem. Hashem did a kindness in such a way that he should be able to pay back what he's obligated, what he's indebted to pay back. The lastly is Baruch and to make for Hashem a home down below. Still no, we say he gave it to me. What's it mean? He gave the matter is called by his name, meaning it's his doing. After Hashem gives it to him, it's not a gift. It's his own doing now. It's not in a way of bread of shame that he's been given this a gift from above and he didn't earn it, which then it's shameful bread. He's embarrassed because he hasn't earned it. But no. Because the initiation, the beginning was through his service. But after he began and after he started the process, so then someone that comes to purify himself, they assist him, and therefore assist him and helps him out, that he should be able to have this mil's chesed from Hashem, that he shouldn't remain lacking. Because through our actions and service in such a manner, this is applicable daily in the service. The beginning of the day when he arises from his sleep, then his neshama, it says, it's still in his nostrils, it didn't yet spread out in the rest of his body. His nefesh alakis, it's returning to him only, and it begins in his nostrils, just like the first time around when Vayipach ba'apav nishvus chaim be'adam adishon. Tzarech leilach lebeis hakneses. He has to first go daven. Avodas hatfilah d'avodah daven. From beis hakneses lebeis hamedrash, from davening he has to go learning limud Torah, the study of Torah. V'achar kach hanig ben minei derech eretz. Then you have to act in the way of the world, to engage with the world. Kiyum v'asiyas ha-mitzvahs, fulfillment and doing of mitzvahs. V'chol inyanim elam tech simcha v'tuv levav. And all these matters are of joy and gladness of heart. through these three pillars of Torah, Avodah, and mitzvahs, the world stands and exists. Whether we're talking about the miniature world, which is the person, also the entire world that surrounds him. That we fix it up and make it ready for the kingdom of Hashem through Mashiach Tzidkenu. And adding in our actions and our service speeds up even more so that he should do kindness and goodness to me. A true goodness, a revealed goodness, a visible and revealed good. And the true and complete redemption is from Mashiach. Then it will be that it says, Baruch Nafshi Hashem, my soul blesses Hashem. So it says it in Baruch Nafshi, it says it 5 times, it says Baruch Nafshi. Why does it say 5 times? This includes 5 worlds. Seder Ishtalshus, Mashalamaylamanu, the 4 worlds of Seder Ishtalshus, Atzilus, Bri Yitzir Asiya, and number 5 is what's on top of Atzilus, or Yisav, Keser, and so on. The Hey Pom Elohim Mizboim Kuv Gimel Kuv Dalch B'Tehillim. The 5 times it says Baruch Nafshi is in chapters 103 and 104 in Tehillim, which is Yud Beis Tammuz, we know is the Friedrich Rebbe's birthday. So in Tafshin Mem Beis, when it was the Friedrich Rebbe's birthday in Tafshin Mem Beis, the Friedrich Rebbe became 103. So it was Shehem Mizmorim Shal Bal Gula B'Shana Sha'avra B'Shana Ba'alein L'Chol Yisrael Tova. These are the Kapitlach Tillim of the Friedrich Rebbe of the previous year, meaning that was 100. The Kapitel 103 was of Tafshin, starting in Tafshin Mem Aleph, and then in Tafshin Mem Beis, Yud Beis Tammuz began Kuv. Near the Bekarov, she have a Niglikoi Davayit will be visible soon. That will be revealed the glory of Hashem. Gili Bechinas Hahei Shalamayla Maseder Ishtalshus, the revelation of the 5th level. It's higher in the chain order of descent, or from the Baruch Nafshi in such a way that my soul bless, meaning Neshama Beguf, the soul and the body will bless. Baruch Nafshi Hashem, Hallelujah, and we come to my soul will bless Hashem, Hallelujah, Bekarov Mehedav Mein Mamish, speedily, it's very soon. The Gula Mitzvah Shlema, the Mashiach Tzidkenu, and the true and complete redemption through Mashiach.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Rabbi Bar.
Amen. Beautiful. Thank you. Have a
Thank you.
wonderful
Thank
good
you.
John to everyone, and Mashiach now.
Amen. Amen. See ya.
Take care.